Welcome to the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. Strike! The 80-20 Coaching Masterclass, our weekly get-together where coaches go from new to good and good to great. Mastering the fundamentals and the art of coaching.
Welcome 80-20 baseball listeners, baseball coaches, parents. Welcome to this week's episode. We are starting a 5-part series, the 5 phases of hitting. I am very excited about this because those of you listeners that have been here for a while, you know I'm big on taking these complex actions, in this case, the complex action or the difficult task of hitting and breaking it down into parts, almost a checklist. We've talked about plan A, plan 2. We synthesized the pitch selection plan that hitters should have. And this week, I want to share with you the first part in a 5-part series where we synthesize the phases of hitting. I've tried to get it down to as few as possible. I want you all to know that my goal was not to have more phases. I've been around a long time in the coaching world, and more often than not, what I see is an abundance of phases or steps, extra unnecessary phases and steps added in. It sounds better, it seems better until you get out there and actually do the skill, do the task. A simple plan is not only scalable, it can be implemented faster. So I tried really hard to get it down to 4 phases of hitting. Part of me wants to say the 4.5 phases of hitting, but in that I would have to add extra words and complexity. I don't want to go 4.5 because I want it to be simple. So 5 phases of hitting. I've heard this nowhere else. The stuff in here, some of the things I'm going to share out will be different and new. There will be components, of course, you've heard before. I'll do my best to give an optimized take on each of those. So excited to start the 5 phases of hitting series. Now, each week we'll cover one phase. I'll lay out all 5 phases today for you, so I don't keep you in suspense, but we'll break down each of the 5 phases over the next 5 episodes. I'm also going to tie in a bonus tip or piece of information. I got a really good one today. One of the great mental game coaches, probably one of the least known considering how good he was and how much success he had. He was an Olympian back in the 70s. He's written multiple books. I read his book called Parenting Champions. Finished it last week. Lanny Bassham. I'm going to share with you his 3 post-performance questions that he recommends all parents utilize and use. I love when we can systematize a process like our post-game discussion with our kids. Of course, their answers won't be systematized. They'll be unique and different. But I think having a script, and definitely when it's this good, there's no reason to deviate. It gives you a plan. It's easy to remember. And at the end of the day, it's not about us. We want to keep it as simple as we can on our side. But this 3-step question set is phenomenal. It's been used for years by Lanny Bassham very successfully. Highly recommend reading his book, Parenting Champions. I have no affiliation with Lanny, but what I'm trying to do here is bring the best from the best and share it out in the best way possible so it can be leveraged, implemented quickly by all of you, the listeners of the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. So Coach Lanny Bassham shares out his 3 post-game questions that he recommends using with kids and players. I had this thought the other day when I was driving to pick up my kid from school, and it kind of bummed me out a little bit, and that was for the first part of my career, for the first 10 years of my coaching career, I definitely leaned toward the transactional style of coaching versus that transformational connecting. I was focused on coaching the player and not so much the person. You can talk to any player I've ever had, and I stay in contact with a lot of them. They'll never say I mistreated them, but I could have done better in that connection side of it. Interestingly enough, I started teaching about the same time I started coaching, and I've never been transactional with students. It's always been transformational, connections, trying to build up a better person. So I thought about this, and I wish that wouldn't have been the case. I wish I could have been more transformational from the get-go. And I've pivoted 180 on this, and I'm thankful to have made that 180 change. So I'm happy to say that I've learned from that mistake, improved immensely, but I also realized where it came from. Because from the time I was 14 and went into high school to the time I was done playing pro ball, 90% of my coaches were transactional coaches. I had a few awesome, transformational, caring, people first type of coaches, of course, but 90% of them were transactional. And from the time I was 18 to the time I was done playing ball, it was 95% transactional coaches that I was around. And these were successful coaches. So I thought that's what successful coaching looked like. They were successful in the win-loss column, but that's only one metric when it comes to what the role of a great coach is supposed to be. The metrics do not have to be mutually exclusive. You can be a transformational coach and have a great win-loss record. Here are the 5 phases of hitting. This can be used at every level, but really going to focus in on the youth level here. Phase 1, the pre-at-bat, pre-pitch routine. Number 2, setup position. This includes feet placement, posture, and balance. Number 3, the timing trigger. Number 4, pitch selection. And number 5, the swing. So you probably noticed that 3 of those phases happen pre-pitch. You have the pre-pitch or pre-at-bat routine. Then we have the setup position, that's pre-pitch. And then the timing trigger. The timing trigger for a hitter, when they start their initial movement of their swing, almost always comes before the ball is in the air. And then you have pitch selection. So that's while the ball is in the air, more specifically the first half of the pitch to 2/3 of the pitch. And then you have the swing. Now, what a lot of new coaches will do is just work on the swing. They'll focus on just the swing. But those 4 steps before can make or break the chances that hitter or hitters have at success. The 2 most pivotal are number 3 and number 4, being on time and pitch selection. Now, some of you might be thinking, Coach Bo, shouldn't timing be after pitch selection? You saw the pitch, you decided to swing, and now you got to be on time for it. I think a lot of you know where I'm going to go with this. The timing is dictated well before the brain says swing or not swing. There's some low-hanging fruit here. Swinging at the right pitch is the biggest bang for your buck in terms of low-hanging fruit. Teach kids to swing at the right pitches, train them to swing at the right pitches. That's your biggest bang for your buck relative to the difficulty to implement and coach. The next would be being on time. Being on time has the next biggest impact, and again, that can be trained fairly quickly. When I say quickly, it may take a season. It shouldn't take 5 years to get that timing and that timing trigger down perfect, where the hitter just has that rhythm. They know exactly when their swing needs to start to be on time. There's 2 things that can be taught that are the lowest hanging fruit. They're the easiest to coach. That is the pre-at-bat, pre-pitch routine, and then the setup position. These are the easiest to coach because the time constraint is, of course, much less. That said, let's dive into phase 1 right here of the pre-at-bat, pre-pitch routine. Every player should have a routine. They should be able to tell you what their pre-at-bat and pre-pitch routine is. They should write it down. You should have it so you can watch them do it. You should know what every pre-pitch or pre-at-bat routine is for all your players. It doesn't need to be complicated. This is baseball. We don't want to overcomplicate it. They don't need to be doing 10 different things. But there are some key things that should take place before an at-bat and pre-pitch or in between pitches. I think it's important for the hitters to identify the specific point in the current pitcher's delivery that will trigger their load, that will trigger their first movement. When exactly will they initiate movement? Now, that shouldn't be taking place on pitch number 3 or 4, so that's why I put it right there. That's more of a pre-at-bat part of the routine. So hitters should have a preset timing plan. That should be determined before the pitch. And now, how do you figure this out? Without an on-deck circle, this can be challenging. With an on-deck circle or with an area to stand, again, the hitter doesn't need to do the full swing to practice getting that trigger set. They could use the first part, just some of the first initial movements, and they can time it up. Although it helps to have the ability to take a full swing like an on-deck circle because you want to see that the swing is coming through the hitting zone as that pitch crosses the plate. Now, of course, that pitch is out there on a warm-up pitch. The hitters are either watching the pitcher pitch before the inning starts or they're watching the hitter in front of them and they're getting their timing that way. Doing both is even better. So they're timing up the pitcher in his pre-inning warm-up pitches. Get your timing and sequencing ready and dialed in. So when the hitter gets up there, they know I'm going on this. I'm starting on that. This will likely be very similar or even the same for most pitchers. It may be very similar, but there's definitely going to be some nuances here. Pitchers with atypical deliveries may have a different trigger point for the hitter. They may have a super quick delivery. Hitters are going to have to start earlier. For example, a pitcher that's slide stepping. He's a 1 flat to the plate. 1 flat meaning 1 second to the plate. Hitters may have to start their first movement as soon as the pitcher makes his first movement. If the pitcher is extremely slow, the trigger may actually come once the ball's in the air. This is rare, especially as you move up. At the end of the day, it's going to be pitcher dependent and hitter dependent. So the hitter needs to match up their trigger point that starts their movement, their swing, their load with that particular pitcher. This takes time to iron out, but it's definitely something that really is the catalyst for being on time, at least consistently. Number 2, the hitter should know the pitch selection plan. All right, plan A, pitches in the hitting zone. Plan 2, covering the strike zone and the fringes. Now, the third part of this first phase, you got your timing trigger figured out before you get in the box. You know the pitch selection plan A or plan 2. You can find that exactly laid out and bullet pointed in the articles section on the website 8020baseball.com. Number 3, a deep breath, preferably with a focal point. A deep breath with a focal point. A lot of hitters have success taking a deep, full breath with their eyes fixed on a specific small spot on their bat. Another way to do this is to have the hitter take a deep breath with their eyes fixed on the pitcher's cap. Tony Gwynn used to talk about how he would keep his eyes on the pitcher's hat and then try to pick up the ball from there. He said that really helped him over the years. So a deep breath with the eyes focused on the pitcher's hat. I like that almost better because that's where the hitter is going to be looking for the ball coming out of their hand. It's going to be about that distance. So it trains the eyes to focus at that exact distance. Now, of course, the pitch is going to be released closer than that, depending on where the pitcher's at when they're getting that focal point in, but it works really well. It doesn't have to be perfect. So number 1, pre-at-bat, the hitter should figure out when they're going to start their swing based off of the pitcher. Number 2, know the pitch selection plan A or plan 2. Am I swinging at pitches in my hitting zone or 2 strikes? Am I swinging at anything in the strike zone plus the fringes? And number 3, a solid deep breath, full breath with the eyes either fixed throughout on the pitcher's hat, assuming the pitcher's not walking around as his back turned. So test it out, try different things, give the options to the kids. All right, so next week, we're going to talk about the setup position, where the feet should be, balance, and posture. We'll break it down. I'm trying to break it down to its simplest form. 5 phases is as few as I could get, maybe 4.5. And then there's 3 parts to phase 1. There will be 3 parts to phase 2. We'll break down phase 2 next week. Now, you might be wondering, Coach Bo, what about after contact or after the pitch? To me, once the batter hits the ball and makes contact, they become a base runner. Then they're in base running mode. So that's where that bat ends to me. All right, the 3 magic questions that coaches can ask their players and parents can ask their kids after a game or after a tournament. Here we go. What did you do well? What did you learn? How will you get better? Another way to phrase that last one is, how will you improve next time? Even better if kids can do the self-reflection and a self-assessment. In other words, the questions would come out like this. What did I do well? What did I learn? How will I get better? Or how will I improve next time? This reinforces and imprints positives in the self-image, according to Lanny Bassam, Coach Bassam. And question number 2, what did I learn or what did you learn? This turns any mistake into a valuable lesson without amplifying the negatives. And the third question, how will you get better, or how will I get better or improve next time? This directs the focus on future progress and solutions. I recommend not adding feedback on top of this as parents and coaches. Thank them for sharing. Maybe a follow-up question that gets them thinking a little deeper. But I would be very careful to share your opinions. Definitely don't tell them how they're wrong. This is completely subjective. And you want them to get that accountability going. So you want positive reinforcement. You want to turn mistakes into valuable lessons, and you want to direct the focus on future progress and solutions. All right, I hope you liked this episode, and I'm pumped to see all the coaches that are getting the coaching plan. I'll tell you what, you won't be disappointed. It's everything you need to be a great coach, hubbed in one spot, simple login. You have access to it from anywhere. You can have access in a few minutes. And it gives you what I consider the best drill for everything you need to coach as a youth baseball when you're coaching a team. It even has a bonus pitching section where I break down the delivery. Early in my career, for years, I was a pitching coach. I pitched the professional level. That's almost like an add-on. There's the scrimmage guide. It's got so many steps in it that lay out exactly how to maximize and run easily the best scrimmages possible. And there's so much more. So pumped to see all the coaches that are getting that because I know it's going to elevate those coaches, those teams, those practices, and those players. It's right there on the homepage at 8020baseball.com. I even set up Apple and Google Pay on it. The whole idea was just make it as easy as possible from the start to the finish. And I mean all the way through to implementing everything in the plan. Put a ton of time into it, years, and the feedback has been awesome. All right, listeners, we'll be back here next week, next Tuesday. Until then, let's keep taking care of our health so we can have our foundation strong to be the best for our families, close friends, and our team. Let's take this information out there. Let's put it into play. Don't keep it in your head. Don't keep it in your coaching bag. Put it into play. And y'all take care. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Podcast, the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. We got this. Now, let's take the field.